Well, I hope that everybody had a great New Year's holiday. I hope we're all thinking about how to be better for the Lord this new year. We are absolutely blessed to have this time to study God's Word tonight, and I hope that we are thankful for that, and I hope we express that thanks to God maybe in prayer. We're in Job chapter 31, so we're continuing in our journey on Job, and we are definitely over halfway there now. We don't have any announcements tonight, but as always, if you are sick or you're hurting in any way, let us know so we can definitely, for one, be praying for you. But two, if you need anything, please ask us so that we can do anything we possibly can for you. Job chapter 31, like we said, that's where we're at tonight. So if you haven't read Job chapter 31, maybe pause the video, go read Job chapter 31, and then come back. But what we've seen so far in Job chapter 29 and 30, in chapter 29, Job looked back to how things used to be in the good old days in his life. You know, the days that we read about in chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 30, he starts talking about how things are in the moment, and things aren't good for Job in the moment. Remember, he's struggling physically, he's struggling emotionally, he's suffering spiritually, and he's also suffering socially. So Job is suffering all around. But then in chapter 31, Job is declaring to all the friends and anybody else that might be present, and to God, that he is innocent of some specific sin that would necessitate the kind of consequences that he has endured. Job chapter 31 is interesting, because in the 14 sins, specific sins that Job mentions, if he's lying about his innocence, then God is to curse Job. So in a way, Job is almost forcing God to answer. Remember, that's the whole point. The whole point is Job is... he thinks God is hidden. He can't find God, but he wants God to answer him. He wants God to acquit him. He wants God to show everybody that he truly is innocent. So this is Job's way, because Job says, I'm innocent of these things. Well, if God remains silent, then it appears that Job actually was innocent. So God must either answer Job and tell him where he's wrong, or he just must simply activate the curse, and that would show everybody that Job has indeed sinned. Well, we won't waste any more time with introduction, so we'll get right into chapter 31. Job says, I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin? Well, this obviously is the sin of lust, which we read about in the Sermon on the Mount, especially with Jesus saying, there were people that tended to think that adultery was just physical, but Jesus says you can commit adultery with a woman in your heart if you look at her with lustful intent. Well, Job says, no. I've made a covenant with my eyes, okay, that I'm not going to look at a woman, specifically a virgin in this instance, to lust after her. We have to watch our eyes. Our eyes can get us into some serious trouble. Our eyes act as a gateway to our heart. We're to guard our heart. The Bible talks a lot about that. But sometimes we can take in things through our eyes that stir our desires to want to sin. But Job says, I've made a covenant with my eyes. If I saw this woman that I might want to lust after, I don't stare, I don't continue to look at her. I guard my heart What would be my portion from God above and my heritage from the Almighty on high? Is not calamity for the unrighteous and disaster for the workers of iniquity? Job says, just look at the person that is guilty of lusting after a woman. What is their portion from God? Well, Job says, I'll tell you what their portion is from God. I'll tell you what their consequence is going to be. It's not going to be good. God destroys those people. Calamity for the unrighteous, disaster for the workers of iniquity. Does not he see my ways and number all my steps? Now remember, Job has been accused of claiming that God is so high and separated from the earth that the clouds obscure his sight. God isn't able to look down on the earth and see what humanity is doing. Well, that's not what Job claimed. Job claims that God is indeed transcendent and he is above the earth, but that gives him a great vantage point. He gets to look down at humanity and he can indeed see everything that humanity does. God, Job says, knows what my eyes look at because of the position that he occupies. If I have walked with falsehood, now we're transitioning from lust and going into falsehood. If I have walked with falsehood and my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed in a just balance and let God know my integrity. If my step has turned aside from the way and my heart has gone after my eyes, and if any spot has stuck to my hands, then let me sow and another eat, and let what grows for me be rooted out. Job's not guilty of falsehood. Remember, Job was a guy that was rich before his riches were taken away from him, but most people that were rich, at least in the eyes of the friends, were rich because they took advantage of the poor. No. Not Job. He didn't take advantage of the poor. He didn't speak with falsehood. Job is a man of honesty. He's not guilty of wicked actions. His hands aren't spotted with iniquity. His hands are clean. But Job says, if I am indeed guilty of falsehood, then let me grow food and let me not eat from that food. Let other people eat from my food. And what grows for me, let it be uprooted. I'm getting some sun. Let me turn around real quick so that sun's not as bad. So we move from lust to falsehood. From falsehood, we go to adultery. If my heart has been enticed toward a woman, and I have lain in wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down on her. So I don't look at a woman with lustful intent, and because I don't look at a woman with lustful intent, I'm certainly not guilty of the sin of adultery. I don't lie and wait, looking at another woman in my neighbor's house to wait for the opportune moment that I might go act on my desires. That's not in Job's nature. He doesn't do that. Job says, if that's the case, then let my wife grind for another and let others bow down on her. You might see the sexual meaning of those words if you read into that a little bit. For that would be a heinous crime, Job says, and would be an iniquity to be punished by the judges. So if I did commit that, I would be guilty of a sin worth some punishment. In fact, maybe so severe that I have everything taken away from me. For that would be a fire that consumes as far as Abaddon, and it would burn to the root of all my increase. If I have rejected the cause of my manservant or my maidservant, when they brought a complaint against me, What then shall I do when God rises up, when he makes inquiry? What shall I answer him? Job says, you can't tell me I'm guilty of mistreating the people that have worked in my house. I have taken care of them, so much so that when they have come to me with a complaint, even if the complaint is about myself, I have listened. I haven't shown partiality to them because I know that God has put me to be responsible over them, and he's going to demand from me an account. I take care of my servants because I know I'm going to have to answer God. Did not he who made me in the womb make him? And did not one fashion us in the womb? I love that verse. No matter the position in society that we may occupy. In Job's case, Job is a wealthy man, a man of wisdom, a man at one point that was feared by others. Job had people working for him, lower in status, but Job says, I acknowledged that they were at least equal to me in the sight of God. I didn't think myself to be any better than them. That's definitely a truth that is applicable in today's world. If I have withheld anything that the poor desired, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or have eaten my morsel alone, and the fatherless has not eaten of it. Job says, I was a rich man. I had all this food. But when I ate that food, I thought about the people that didn't have any. And I gave them some food. I helped the widows that weren't able to help themselves. The fatherless, the orphan. I fed them. Verse 18, for from my youth the fatherless grew up with me as with a father, and my mother's womb I guided the widow. Job's been showing compassion to the helpless for a long time. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or the needy without covering, if his body has not blessed me, and if he has not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the fatherless because I saw my help in the gate, then let my shoulder blade fall from my shoulder, and let my arm be broken from its socket. So I not only fed the poor and the orphan and helped the widow, but the person that had no clothing, that was exposed to the elements of the world, I gave them clothing. The clothing was from my own flock. So my flock wasn't only to my advantage. I used my flock to help others, for wool, to clothe a person's body so that they may get warm. Job says, I occupied a big position at the gate. People remember, we've already read in Job, when Job went to the gate, they would put their hands over their mouth. They wouldn't speak. The young kids, they would flee. People would stand up. Job never took advantage of the orphan. He could have. He could have used the orphan to his own advantage, but he never did that. And he said, if I did do that, then look how harsh that is. Then let my shoulder blade fall from my shoulder, and let my arm be broken from its socket. For I was in terror of calamity from God, and I could not have faced his majesty. So why did I show compassion to the helpless? Job says, I'll tell you why I showed compassion. Because I realized I was going to be accountable for how I treated others. My actions had consequences. God knew. Remember, God knows Job's steps. He knows what path Job is walking. He knows when he strays from the path of righteousness or not. God knows everything, and because God knows everything, He knows how Job treats people. And because of that, Job says, I looked at the holiness of God, or at least I thought about God's majesty and His greatness, His holiness. And I thought about what it would be like if I took advantage of the poor one day. I could not match up to God's holiness. God's holiness wouldn't let me get by treating people that way. God's holiness, His majesty would overwhelm me. It would hold me accountable for how I treated others. That's why I did it. Job feared God. Why was Job a wise man? Because he had all this knowledge? No, Job was a wise man because he feared God. Remember the hymn of wisdom that we read about already in the book. Wisdom is the fear of God. If I have made gold my trust or called fine gold my confidence. Remember, one of the friends has already told Job, you're guilty of trusting too much in riches, but if you would just put your riches down and you would never return to them and you would return to God, everything would be good for you. Job says, I've never put my trust and my confidence in my riches. Now, for a rich person, that's hard to do because you know what? Money is a powerful motivator, okay? Not only for others to do things for us, but also a motivator in our life to seek after more money. Because when we have more money, we usually have a better position in life. We have more power, at least we feel like, and we just want more. And because we feel like we're better than everybody else, then we start to treat people just like that, like we're better than everybody else. They're just a means to our end. They're not humans. It's how some rich people think. The Bible warns us not to love money, remember. Well, Job's not guilty of that. If I have rejoiced because my wealth was abundant, or because my hand has found much, if I have looked at the sun when it shone, or at the moon moving in its splendor, Job isn't guilty of worshiping the sun and the moon. Did people actually worship the sun and the moon? Yes, people worship the sun and the moon. But Job's not guilty of worshiping other gods. And my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand. I showed no sign of affection to the sun or the moon. My allegiance has been to Yahweh. This also would be an iniquity to be punished by the judges, for I would have been false to God above. I've acknowledged that God is the true God. He is sovereign. He is supreme. I haven't worshipped other beings, Job says. If I've rejoiced at the ruin of him who hated me, or exulted when evil overtook him, I have not let my mouth sin by asking for his life with a curse. If the men of my tent have not said, who is there that has not been filled with his meat? Notice what Job did when men came to his tent, or even strangers. We keep reading, the sojourner has not lodged in the street. I have opened my doors to the traveler. Job is compassionate. He is hospitable to others. They don't go hungry. If I have concealed my transgressions as others do by hiding my iniquity in my heart, because I stood in great fear of the multitude, and the contempt of families terrified me, so that I kept silence and did not go out of doors. Oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me. We're out of time for tonight, and I don't want to rush the last little part to Job 31 because it's incredible, and I think we can learn a great deal from it. So we'll begin with that next week. I hope you have a great rest of the week. I can't wait to see everybody Sunday. God bless.